In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to download the USDZ file, how to add it to Reality Composer, and how to add custom artwork to your Lightbox scene. First off, I want to start off with our USDZ file. So this file is a 3D file. As you can see, you can move around the object. The first thing we want to do is when we get to this file, you're going to see this screen. And I want you to click the box icon on the top right. That's going to give you this scene. Then I want you to click the share icon on the top right. From there, save to files and add it to on my iPad in the Reality Composer folder. I already have the file saved, so I'm not going to download it again, but you need to save it to your iPad in order to add it to Reality Composer. Next, we're going to open up Reality Composer, and we're going to start a new project by clicking the plus icon on the top right. Reality Composer asks you which anchor do you want. In this case, we're going to choose the vertical anchor. The program also comes with a few things already placed in your scene, so we want to delete these. If I select that object, and I select the object again, I can delete the object. And if I select the other one, select it again, I can delete. Now I have a blank canvas with which to add my Lightbox. So we could press the plus icon on the top right, and then we have to press the big plus icon in the imported section because we're going to import this file into our scene. From there, find your Reality Composer folder and select the Lightbox USDZ file. We select the file in order to add it to our scene. But the problem is, once it's added to our scene, it's actually turned sideways. This grid in the background is your wall, and this object would be placed on your wall. Well, we don't want it to look like that. So we can either select the red arrow and rotate it by selecting this ring and dragging it back, and we can move it to -90 degrees. Also, we could just select the rotation area here on the right and change that to -90 degrees. Either way works. Next, we want to scale the object up to make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to scale it up to 200%, somewhere around there. Now we need to shift the box. As you could see, the box is not touching the wall back here. And you could leave this space, or you could just, see I selected something, so I'm going to undo here. All right, so we can shift it back a little bit. We can move it back along the y-axis, and as we move it back, you'll see it snaps to the wall, which is good. Now I'm going to select the blue to move it down on the z-axis. Try and put it right in the center of our scene. So now it's time for the fun part, which is adding your artwork. I'm going to open up the Keynote app, and I'm going to start with a new, actually, I'll just add a new blank slide here. So with the plus icon, we could select the shapes here. We could add all kinds of objects to our scene. In this case, I want to add a tree. Now, it doesn't really matter how big the tree is here in Keynote. Sometimes it's nice to make it a little bigger to see what you're working with. So we want to make two trees. One is going to be our dark tree, our silhouette, and the other one's going to be our shadow behind that silhouette. So we could select the object, we can copy, select outside of the object, select it again, and paste. We now have two trees. But in order to make this more like a shadow, we select the brush icon and we change the opacity down to about 40%. Now that we have our objects, we can place them in our Reality Composer scene. We go back to Reality Composer, and from the bottom of the iPad, we can drag our finger up slowly, and you'll see the taskbar open up on the bottom. If we long press on Keynote and drag it over to the side, we can have both applications open at the same time. I'm going to select my dark silhouette tree, and then I'm going to long press on it and drag that to our scene, and you'll see the plus icon and the yellow circle indicates I am placing that image into my scene. Sometimes it doesn't place it where you tell it to place, which I don't know why. So there's my object, and I'm going to move Keynote out of the way because I want to scale the object down so that way it fits in my light box. I'm going to drag it up, and now it's behind my light box. So with the green arrow, I'm going to move it forward on the y-axis just enough so it fits in my light box. Now, keep note of your scale. In this case, I scaled it down 33%. Keep that number in mind because we're going to open up Keynote again, and we could just drag from the right, open up Keynote again, and we're going to select our silhouette image. Long press, drag to your scene, and it placed it way over here. And then get rid of Keynote and change the scale to 33% because we want it to be roughly the same size as the other tree. I'm going to drag it out on the y-axis, and you'll see when you drag it, sometimes you get little bounding boxes like yellow here. And that just tells me it's flush with the front of that object. So those can be helpful sometimes when you're moving objects around. But I want this to be behind our tree and a little over to the side. So that way it gives kind of a shadow effect. And there we go. We've added our first object in there. You could shift it and move it around however you want. Now, if we deselect any objects in here, keep in mind that sometimes it can be a bit of a pain to reselect those objects. You have to get pretty close to the object to select it. So if you want to make more adjustments to it, just be sure to pinch and zoom in so that way you can ensure that you select that object. So in order to test it out, click the AR button and find a flat surface with good lighting so that way you could test your scene out in real life. One last thing about Keynote is that you can use icons to create your lightbox scene, or you can use your pencil to draw your objects. So let's say I wanted to create an ocean with waves. Create a simple shape here. And now I have blue, the waves, I guess you could say, kind of look like waves. And so if I go back to Reality Composer and I'm like, oh, I like that, I can select that object, drag it onto my scene, and now that custom shape is part of my scene. Lower the scale. See, that scale is not quite what I'm looking for, so I want to make it a little bit bigger. And I also don't want it to poke out of the bottom. And there we go. So that'll work for water It'll work for mountains. You could also create objects in Procreate and just export as a PNG file with transparency, and you can make some really cool artwork in a Lightbox.